I woke up to the same pale ceiling, the same shadows danced across the wall, the light from the window fell in. The same place SOFT, cold, familiar. I made coffee just like I always do. It tasted the same, not strong, not sweet, just routine. The clock ticked. The room was silent. Nothing felt different. But somehow everything was about to change. And I didn't even know IT yet. It was just sitting there, on top of a book I haven't touched in years. No envelope, nitrogen monoxide explanation, just a single piece of paper folded once. I knew the handwriting. IT was mine. But I didn't remember writing night. The ink looked fresh. The words were strange. Familiar but distant. It said one line, "Meet me where you lost yourself." There was no name, but somehow I knew exactly who it was from and who IT was for. It was only one line, but it hit harder than any paragraph ever could. Meet me where you lost yourself. No date, nitrogen monoxide time. NO map, just memory. I stood there, holding that piece of paper, hearing every place. I once walked away from myself. Every time I stayed silent, when I wanted to scream, every time I shrank to make others comfortable, I knew exactly where I had to go. Because the place you lose yourself is never really forgotten. IT just waits until you're ready to return. Not literally, but step by step, memory by memory. I followed the thread, back to who I used to be. I went to the train station where I cried for the first time. I'm public. I stood outside the cafe where I gave up on my dream because someone told me IW was senti enough. I walked down the street where I last saw them, the person who broke me, in a way I pretended didn't hurt. Every place held a piece of me, a version I left behind, a choice I regretted, a word I never said. And as I walked, IT felt less like a journey and more like a conversation between who I was and who I was about to become. I didn't see him at first. He was standing in the shade, hands in his pockets, eyes looking at something far away, or maybe looking at nothing. But when I saw his face, I froze. IT was older, calmer, different, not just in age, but in presence. He didn't look surprised to see me like he'd been, standing there for years, waiting for this moment. Tio catch up. He nodded, nitrogen monoxide words. No smile, just acknowledgement like a memory welcoming itself. Back home. His face carried weight, not the kind that comes from age, but from experience. There were lines around his eyes, but they didn't speak. Of pain, they spoke. Of understanding. Of quiet victories. He looked like someone who had fought hard battles, but nitrogen monoxide longer. Needed to prove anything. He wasn't trying to impress. He wasn't hiding anything. He stood there, entirely ENOUGH. I saw a version of me who had finally stopped running. From the past, from expectations, from himself. And for the first time, I wanted to know who I would become if I chose peace over perfection. There were lines on his face I didn't recognize, but they didn't speak of stress. They spoke of survival. He looked like someone who had been through a war, but one you fight within yourself, and somehow he had made it out alive. He carried nitrogen monoxide anger, and oh rush, nitrogen monoxide need to prove anything. There was a stillness in his eyes, the kind that only comes from losing everything and learning that you never needed IT to begin with. He looked tired not from life, but from trying to be who the world expected and He looked like someone who had come home to himself. I expected a speech, advice, some grand reveal of what my future would look like, but he didn't give me any of that. Instead, he stood there, still, quiet, present, and I started talking about the fears I never shared, the regrets I buried, the hopes I stopped, admitting out loud. He never interrupted, never judged, just listened. The way I never learned to listen to myself, and in that silence, I heard something I'd never heard before. My own truth, not covered in shame, not edited for acceptance, just raw, real and ready to be heard. He reached into his bag and pulled out a journal, worn, stained, held together by time. Tea looked familiar. I remembered. This journal, I had it years ago, but I threw IT away. Too many blank pages, too many dreams. I didn't believe in anymore. But this one, IT wasn't empty. IT was full of thoughts, of mistakes, of lessons I hadn't lived yet, but would. I flipped through the pages and saw words I never wrote, but knew were mine. A.S. if he, the future me. H.A.D. finished a story. I was too afraid to start, and in that journal, I didn't find answers. I found perspective. I thought he would stay longer, maybe tell me something profound, maybe warn me about what was coming, but he just looked me in the eye and said one thing: don't chase who I become who you needed when you were breaking. And in that moment, everything made sense. I'd spent years trying to build a future based on what I thought success looked like, based on who I thought I had to be loved, respected, remembered. But he, my future self, wasn't asking me to catch up to him. He was asking me to slow down, look back, and heal the pieces I left behind, to be gentle with my past and intentional with my growth, not to rush forward, but to rise from where I fell. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't vanish in smoke or light. He just turned around and walked away like IT was never about him staying, but about me, remembering. And suddenly the world felt different. Not louder, not brighter, just clearer. I looked around and I wasn't lost anymore, not because I found a map, but because I finally knew who I was following. Myself, the version of me who made it through the worst days, who loved me when nitrogen monoxide one else did, who kept going even when I wanted to give up. He wasn't just my future, he was my reminder. And as I stood there alone but not empty, I realized I never needed to become anyone else. I just needed to come home to me.